yeah, we can do Wilt. You can start with Wilt if you want. So I had Wilt
Sure.
Chamberlain
I
also.
mean, yeah. So like, when I kind of put this list together, I used a very like basic formula to get an initial ranking, and then I tweaked off of that. And this is literally just of the guys. So I came up with like an initial list of guys who just like are on this level as players. And it's like 30 guys. Out of that group, I was like, how many times did you win a championship? How many times were you the best player on that team? And I counted being the best player on that team twice versus the win, right? So like Michael Jordan, and then for Russell and Havlicek, I divided it by two based on the era. Um, and for West, I didn't, because he actually won after kind of like there was expansion to an extent. Um, but so based on that formula, Jordan like did have the most points. And I won't like spoil the rest of my list, but basically there was a group of 10 guys who were like pretty comfortably the top 10. Elijah Wan was just outside of that, but I like you, I think Hakeem you know, is underrated historically. I don't have him nearly as high as you. But Wilt like isn't there. He just isn't, and people want to like talk about all the stats and everything with Wilt, but like he's the best player of like I'll give him credit for how dominant he was by putting him the top of that group that isn't there. But like there's just there's a class of players who like won several championships as the guy. I'm never gonna put Will in that group. Like people will say he's top five, he's Mount Rushmore. Like he's just not. And like that's kind of what it boils down to for me. I'm closer to putting him lower than higher, is what I'll say.
Yeah, my Wilt thing is if he was this, and I get the Celtics had this great team, but like Wilt's teams are pretty good in Philly. Like he wasn't playing on absolute dog shit teams. If you look at his rosters, they were good rosters. Um, Even like adjusting for the era, like he wasn't just playing with bums; he was playing with really good teams. For the most part, you look at his rookie year, he's got like Paul Arizin as Hall of Famer. Like he's playing with guys. Um, and it's just you can go through it. It's fine. It's not like look. They're not as good as the Celtics, the teams, but like part of getting it done is getting it done. And if he was as dominant as his numbers would lead you to believe and all that type of stuff, I think he would have won more championships. And um, the other thing is, this is a guy who was repeatedly accused of like stat hunting through his career. Like this, like he literally led the league in assists one year because he just wanted to prove he was not an
Yeah, he
unselfish
wasn't
player.
he wasn't just accused of it. He like openly talked about it. I mean, to me, like he's a lot like his era's James Harden, um, in terms of like the unabashedly like talking about his numbers and how like and also apparently Jason Tatum now too, like holding up the 50, but that at least that's in a game 7. Um, but like the difference is that Wilt did win. Like in 66, 67, like he was the centerpiece of an all-time team. Like that Sixers team went 68-13. They kind of steamrolled through the playoffs, and Wilt was like unequivocal. I mean, they had Hal Greer, who was also a Hall of Famer, Billy Cunningham, but like Wilt was unequivocally the guy. And I think, shout out to Ben Taylor, who we talked about earlier on this one. I, don't dig into like historical film or like try to put together like advanced metrics from the past, but like he talks about how Wilt was an all-time defensive player, and like that doesn't even show up in the stats that are like
Yeah,
so.
because they didn't track blocks and all that shit, right? So
Yeah, but like I trust that, and I can like intuitively understand that based on the fact that he was basically like the Victor Wembanyama of his time as like a freak. So like I have no doubt that like even with all the stat hunting and all the times he came up short, like he had this ability to like be the best player in the world and lead a
He
team to a championship, because he did do it.
he's also just has like weird years sprinkled in. Like in 62, 63, his team goes 31-49 and he plays full season basically. In 64, 65, they go 17-63. He plays he only played 38 games that season though. But still, like, I don't know. I don't know how to like parse through all this. Okay, next year, 65, 66, they go 35-45. He plays. Actually, no, he's traded by this point. Sorry, I was still like looking at the San Francisco Warriors roster here. But like he just has weird. I don't know. There's just weird stuff with Will sprinkled in, right? Where you're like, wait, um, what happened this season? Why did you guys stink? And it's like, why didn't you win this year? Why didn't you win that year? Uh, I don't know. He's a very unique player. Is one way to put it. Like they go 40-40 his first year in Philly. All right, so and he only plays 35 games that year, so he misses a bunch of time too. This is another thing. He missed a bunch of time in these points of the season. 50 like 65, 66, they go 55-25. They lose to Boston. 66, 67, they finally win the championship. See, they go 68-13. This is one of the all-time. This is a great team. They beat Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. Next year, they lose to Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. They go 62-20 that year. They were the number one seed. 68-69, they lose to Boston again. And so on and so forth. They lose to Boston, lose to Milwaukee, whatever it is. But he got beat by his contemporaries pretty consistently. Bill Russell beat him, owned him in a lot of ways. Kareem comes in, he's better than him. He's losing series to the fucking Baltimore Bullets and shit. I don't know. He's a weird player, but he's a great player. There's no question about that. He definitely is deserving of his status as one of the great players of all time. But like, if you're asking me, like to me to be in this, next tier of like, I have like, it's annoying that it's like top 10. It's actually like a top 11 to me. But I think you have to own your era in a certain way, and you can't have like, we'll talk about Hakeem, but like, or if you didn't own it, you need to like have some real extenuating circumstances for why it didn't happen. And Will ultimately won 2 championships in his career, and he was only the best player in one of them. And the Lakers one is like, I don't know. People don't consider him. He's not considered like an all-time great Laker. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason for that, and it's because he just wasn't a dominant force there. I mean, it's later in his career. It's understandable, but I think when you really look at his career, the meat and potatoes of his career, he didn't do enough. And he didn't do enough, even though like all the stories and everything about him is he's his long jumping, his sprinting, he's fucking doing all this. He's the best athlete in the world. And it's like, okay, well, if you're the best everything in the world and you only won one championship at your peak, what does that say? So yeah, that's why I have him where I have him. He's a really tough player for me to rank because I mean, I basically just shit on him this entire time, but like he was obviously unequivocally great. And again, like I think the other thing too, like that 72 finals where they lose to Boston is like a crazy finals loss. And in that, or whatever it was, 16, I don't remember what the exact year was, but like he gets benched on the stretch because his coach thinks he's like, basically faking an injury or something like that. And it's a crazy thing. Like, I don't know. I have no idea. It's just a very, very interesting career he had. He apparently had sex with many women, so congrats to him on that. I hope he's doing well up in the afterlife. But yeah, he's just I don't know where to put him. I know where to put him. I put him where I think is appropriate. I don't like like it's weird to me that people are well, he's obviously a top 10 player. I'm like, is he? Like, I don't know. Like I don't really understand why that's like an automatic thing that we just oh yeah, he's top 10, he's top like that. Is he really though? Is he? I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think both of us, like again, we talked about criteria to start this. I think it's nice to like we use stats sometimes to illustrate points here, but like it's just not about like looking at a box score. And if that's how you want to talk about basketball, like that would lead you to a lot of weird opinions, like thinking guys like Russell Westbrook are MVPs. So Wilt won enough to get here, and the stats, like, and talking about his defense and all that, but he didn't win as much as the guys above him did in more difficult eras. I've always had Hakeem Olajuwon above Kobe. This was another last minute thing that I put Kobe a spot higher, but now you talking about Hakeem earlier and saying how high you have him made me like ashamed of that. So like that was my 10 and 11. You like kind of teased your Hakeem argument. I know you have him higher, but should we just talk about him now?
Yeah, I mean, we can do it. I had, just so we're clear, I had Kobe and Shaq 10 and 11.
Okay. I had Shaq 9. So like I had Shaq 1 above. Who'd you have higher between those two?
I have Kobe higher than Shaq.
Okay.
So I have Kobe at 10. I have Shaq at 11. I punish Shaq. In some ways, it's the Wilt thing, but it's like these guys were so dominant, they probably should have done more. And I know that's crazy to say about Shaq. He won 4 championships. He won an MVP. But it's like, this is a guy that should have won like 5 MVPs. Like, he's like a fucking absolute physical dominant force. Walked out of bed, could average 30 and 15. I mean,
you put him below, like, do you think he did, like, yeah, he should have done more, but isn't it unfair to rank him lower, like, than what he actually did do? And I'm not saying you're doing that, but
well, I think that I think he should have done more. 2, I think it's bullshit that people punish Kobe for playing with him, but they'll never punish Shaq for playing with the guys he did. Like, he didn't play like he's like Durant, right? Like, he played like exclusively with Hall of Famers his entire career. He played with Penny before Penny got hurt. Okay, then he gets traded to LA. He plays with Kobe. He gets coached by Phil Jackson, right? Like, this is an amazing spot. He gets traded to Miami. He gets to play with Dwayne Wade, and he plays for Pat Riley. Okay, then he gets traded to Phoenix. He's playing with fucking Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire. Okay, fine. Then at that point, the Phoenix was like the last spot where he was still a good player. Then we get the Cleveland era Shaq. We get the Celtics era Shaq, which is a very, very sad image that I hope to never see. But like, I think he should have done more in his career. I know that sounds crazy to say. I think he should have won more. I think his ego got in the way. Obviously, Kobe's ego was part of that too. But I think it's interesting that, like, again, when you talk about that, it's always, oh, Kobe broke that up. And I think that's bullshit. Like, I think they both were parts of that. Like, they were both incapable. Neither of them was capable of doing the Dwayne Wade thing, right? Of like, no, look, you're the best player on the team. Like, you be you, I'll figure it out. Neither of them was capable of that.
But like, my thing there is like, I still give them a lot of credit for the 3 straight years that they won. Like, given how massive that team was, just in terms of like like both of them were not only like 2 of the most famous players, probably the 2 most famous basketball players in the world at that point, like post Jordan, but like in order to not only like be able to play together at all, but actually complement each other and to win and then win again and then win again. Like, you just see time after time, like these star pairings, especially like these days, but really always, like there's just not enough air in the room. And it's like the whole, like, disease of me stuff, like whatever, like, and eventually that got them, but like they fucking three-peated before that. And
they were amazing.
Held down the, and I know we're not arguing really, because like we both have him at the exact same spot, other than like me having Hakeem 1 spot lower, where I'm kind of like, now, should I put Hakeem higher? Because like, he won his 2 chips without anyone remotely close to Shaq and Kobe.
I just think like I have to give Kobe an edge for like, 1, he didn't bounce around the league. And I know I'm not saying he was a perfect teammate. I'm not going to pretend like he never at least fake threatened to like want to leave and shit like that. But he didn't leave at the end of the day. He did all of his damage with 1 franchise. Shaq didn't do that. Shaq bounced around the league again, which is not entirely his fault. I mean, there's reasons for all of this stuff. Um, and I think like I will just give the edge to Kobe because I think you could never say Kobe didn't get the absolute most out of his career. And that is at like every stage of his career. Like there's no stage of his career. So forget just championship years, but like years when you're not winning a championship, years when you're playing with Smush Parker, years when you have to fucking watch D'Angelo Russell piss and embarrass himself on the floor. Like you're getting the absolute most out of whatever you have to give. Okay.
Now that might not be what you want him to do when he's like post Achilles. You might want
Right.
him to kind of be taking a step back. But
Right.
I agree, and I also think like longevity wise, like
It's an amazing career. Yeah.
even though those final like 3-4 seasons post Achilles were like, I'm not going to give him any credit for like stats he amassed on like 37% shooting or whatever it was then. But before that, you still have 17 years of like, okay, he comes into the league, he's an instant superstar. He's a number 2 to Shaq, but like an absolutely essential, not a number 2 like a Kevin McHale, like a number 2, like a 1A, 1B type of situation.
Yeah.
And then, like you mentioned, there's like the lean years, the Smush Parker years. He's able to do it as a number 1. You know, Pau Gasol was more of a traditional number 2. Like there's no question who was the guy on that team. And they went to 3 straight finals, won 2 of them pretty convincingly with in 2009. And just also like something else I care about here that I think we'll start talking about as we get into the top 10 is like regular season moments like matter to me. Like if we're just doing like the top 50 moments of a career,
Oh, Kobe has so many.
it's Jordan. It's probably Jordan, Steph, and Kobe is probably the top 3. Um,
The
and like that
LeBron,
shit
the
matters.
LeBron layups don't get you going.
um, like the Kobe, like just his legacy is fucking amazing.
Kobe, so Kobe from 90, so from the first championship year, so that's 99 2000 through to when he busts his Achilles in 2012-13. This is just his averages over that is like 14 years, 13 years, whatever the fuck it is. 13 years. He plays 1,039 games, averages 38.8 minutes per game. He averages 27.8 points, 5.7 rebounds, 5.2 assists, 45.5 from the field, 33.6 from three, 84% from the free throw line. Also gets you 1.6 steals, 0.5 blocks. Another thing I want to say, that's people always talk about like, oh, you didn't pass enough. Like the guy is a great passer for a 2-guard. Give me a fucking break. And like it's become a meme now because he didn't make too many defensive teams. Like he did make defensive teams that he clearly didn't deserve to make based on reputation, but he actually was an amazing defender at one point in time. Like it was not like a joke. Like if you go back and you watch the 2001 finals, once they put him on Iverson, and he actually like had Iverson in fucking jail in the last couple games of that series. Like he completely locked him up.
Yeah, just because he didn't deserve 12 defensive teams doesn't mean he wasn't like an all defensive guard in his prime.
Right. And I think to me, that's another part. Like Shaq, like, you know, Shaq did not show up for regular seasons. Shaq was like, I'm going to hang out. I'm going to be fat. I'm going to play myself into shape. And, you know, I'm not going to try on defense. Like, Kobe was trying. Like Kobe tried. Kobe had to carry those teams in the regular season to an extent. Not the first year they win the championship together, but you can see like as time goes on, he's the one that's doing more and more and more of the carrying of the load, of the majority of the load, especially in the regular season. And I do think that was like a source of friction for sure, where he's like, look, like I'm the one that's like busting my ass coming in here, you know, from day one, ready to go. And like, he's the guy that's getting all these laurels at the end of the season because he's the best player on the team, finals MVP. Like, I think it's bullshit. And I think he deserves credit for that. I think he deserves, like, you said regular seasons matter. Like, there's no way you can argue to me Kobe didn't get more out of his regular seasons than Shaq did. Because if Shaq cared about the regular seasons, he would, again, I promise you, he would have won like fucking 5 MVPs. Like if he cared about the regular season, he
Right.
would have won way more MVPs. And you can argue Kobe. I think Kobe should have won more MVPs, not a ton. I think he deserved like one or two more MVPs, probably just one to be honest. But like he did win an MVP. He deserved it. He's 2-time scoring champ. Like the guy had a great career, and I think he had a more fulfilling career than Shaq did. Not that I mean, look, I think Shaq is very happy with his career.
Yeah.
But I think if you were like which guy got the most out of it, which guy delivered more value over the course of his career consistently, I would say Kobe. If people put Shaq, like if you want to just say Shaq's peak matters so much that all of that shit doesn't matter, that's also fair to me. Like Shaq's peak is insane. So I'm
Yeah,
fine with that.
I really could go either way. I'm like feeling like I should have Kobe higher now. I just put Shaq higher because of that peak. Because like peak Shaq with the Lakers was there's been very few players that have had a stranglehold on the league like that.
Mhm.
Um, and they're all not only higher on this list, but a few spots higher on this list. And the reason Shaq's a little lower than the rest of them is because of all the other stuff that you're talking about. Um, and Kobe was never like Kobe was probably the best player in the league at the end of the 2000s. Um, but like it was he never had that kind of like hold on it, but he still won two titles there. So I'm cool either way with that. I think maybe we should save Hakeem until we get to like your spot for him.
Yeah, we can do that.
If you want to move. So like bring me to number 8 and you to number 9, right?
Yeah, I have Bird at 9.
So I have him at 8. So we're lockstep there.
Yeah, I think
Um,
Bird's career is one of the most influential players of all time. Obviously, him and Magic kind of tied together, saved the league, right? That whole
yeah.
thing. I think that has to count. I mean, I don't mean that as like a it's this whole thing. No, like he deserves like that's a real thing that he deserves credit for. Three-time NBA champ, best player on those teams, all-time great shooter, all-time great clutch player, some of the best stories ever, some maybe the best shit talker ever. Like very annoying that this man played for the Celtics because I would fucking like love if he was on the Knicks or something. Like just like awesome career, awesome stories. Nobody says shit about him. Everybody like he's one like we talked about. Everybody that played in the era is like, oh my god, fucking Bird is a killer, right?
And
Um,
also he was like not that again and I'm glad we haven't talked about this at all, like all of the hypothetical like, oh, if he played in a different era, like all that shit that you have to play in your era. But the fact that Bird like was so clearly underutilized, like he was an incredible 3-point shooter and just didn't fucking take them. um it's just like nuts to think that he would still, again, I'm not being like, oh, if he had taken them, he would have won this many titles, so I'm moving him higher. Like I'm putting him where I am, but like it is nuts to think about that he accomplished what he did given how underutilized he was.